Good evening again, Team 5. Do we know if Mika is joining you or does she have some issues?
No, we are afraid he's not joining.
Okay, so it will be just the two of you today. Yeah? Can we just start like that?
Yes,
Okay.
indeed.
Okay, well, in that case, I would like to welcome you all to the Hague Debate Tournament quarterfinals. My name is Sophia. I will be hosting this match together with Maria, who will be keeping the time today. First, allow me to introduce the judges for this match. That's going to be Dr. Nobrega, Ms. Montero, and Ms. Gaipova. The two teams debating in this match are Team 3, that's Orkan, Isabel, and Momchul, and Team 3, which will be then just Max and Mark. Here, I would like to remind you that this is an elimination round. That means the team that gets the lower score in this match will be eliminated. The topic of this match is the following. EU law should have more ambitious target of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Now I will use the randomizer to decide which team is going to be arguing in what position. I will share my screen for that. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So team five will be the con position in this match, and team 3 then will be the pro position in this match. Is that clear to everyone?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Before we start the countdown of the 5 minutes that you have for the preparation, I would like to remind you all that the format of this match is slightly different in the timings in comparison to the previous one. Here in this match, you have 4 minutes for your opening speeches, 2 minutes per member in the rebuttal phase, and 2 minutes for your closing speeches. If that is clear, we can start the countdown of the 5 minutes.
That is clear.
Perfect. If you're not looking at your screen, you have 1 minute remaining. The preparation time is up, and now I would like to start the debate and invite the first speaker of the team 3, the pro team, to present their opening statement.
Good evening. Before I start, can everyone see and hear me? Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Isabel Lettner, and me and my colleagues, Momchil Bonef and Orkun Akendis, will be arguing in favor of the EU needing more ambitious targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The main arguments for this stance will be as following. First, the negative implications of greenhouse gases. Second, the reliance on fossil fuels. And third, the EU reluctance to use better energy alternatives. Global warming, air pollution, these contemporary issues are the result of greenhouse gas emissions. Consequently, the human greed for development and economic gain is achieved by the combustion of fossil fuels, which releases vast amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Furthermore, due to the constant growth in world population, there is an increased demand for livestock products, which negatively contribute to the climate change. For example, Methane, which is released by cattle through belching, has a 28% higher impact on global warming than carbon dioxide. Additionally, nitrous oxide, arising from the use of fertilizers, is a molecule with an environmental impact 265 times higher than carbon dioxide. Accordingly, the EU sets a high level of environmental protection stated in Article 37 of the EU Charter on Fundamental Rights. For instance, the European Commission proposed an effective ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2035. However, these are just proposals, therefore lacking a legally binding nature, hence leading to a failure of upholding the high standards set out in Article 37. Furthermore, the EU's fault of relying on fossil fuels will result in a catastrophe should there be no ambitious targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. According to a study by Dr. Hannah Ritchie and Dr. Max Rose, the world would likely run out of fossil fuels in this century. Consequently, the EU has an obligation to its citizens to switching to renewable energy. By investing into this environmental friendly energy source, the EU would avoid the issue of not only ruling out of fuel, but also circumventing the rising cost of fossil fuels during this decline. In addition, the stigma created by nuclear energy is having a detrimental effect on the EU's target on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Despite the knowledge that the fossil fuels are the biggest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, the EU is refusing to mark nuclear power as a low-carbon technology for their green taxonomy framework, therefore denying nuclear plants state aid. Even further, the EU is disregarding their own agency's report stating nuclear power to be a clean, near-zero emission energy source. The Joint Research Center further established that nuclear power greenhouse gas emissions are lower than those of solar panels. Ladies and gentlemen, it is for these reasons that we believe the EU is required to have more ambitious targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions as time is of the essence. Future generations will be robbed of the right to a clean environment should the EU fail in its environmental obligations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your opening speech. Just to be clear, you were perfectly within your allocated time. That was a mistake on our side. Once again, to reiterate, the opening speeches are to be to last for 4 minutes. So thank you very much for your speech. Your full speech will count. Will be graded by the judges. Don't worry about that. And once again, apologies for the confusion. Now I would like to invite the con team, Team 5, to present their opening statement. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you. Ms. President, dear committee, opposition, and dear guests. We recognize that the climate change is a global humanitarian matter and that is not to be taken lightly by any means. Nevertheless, how can we prioritize an upcoming potential crisis over the catastrophe that we are facing right now? In 2020, nations all around the world were abruptly struck by the highly contagious virus, COVID-19, resulting in a global pandemic and emergency lockdowns that directly and negatively impacted not only the health of all people, but global economics on all scales as well. This led to extremely high drops in GDP compared to previous decades. It is generally understood that the threat this pandemic poses to all nations worldwide is immediate, and this matter must be prioritized before focusing any further agenda in a long-term process that the EU and its member states have planned out. How can one expect to spare any additional resources on solving an issue which is way more of future concern? The EU Commission has finished their economic forecasting and estimated that until 2023, their numbers and states will remain in negative numbers. By the end of 2022, the Luxembourg's budget balance is to be situated at minus 0.1%, with the closest to be to the positive inflation, while Romania is predicted to end this year with minus 7.1% of their budget balance. Overall, the European Union is expected to be exactly in the middle in minus 3.7% budget balance. So how are those resources to be spent? Can the EU even afford to financially support individual member states' green plans when those resources could be spent on combating and solving the crisis which has traumatically impacted almost everyone and everything on this planet? It is undeniable that the COVID-19 global pandemic directly resulted in negative economic and presently continues to do so. Member states have their green plans already set in motion, and any further amendment at this point might cause more harm than benefit. This issue is of a national character, where states need to know what they are currently capable of and how they should approach those objectives. All in all, the cost of not taking an action regarding the health crisis is too grave, and the price of joint failure is greater than price of inaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite the Pro team to present their first rebuttal speech.
Okay, thank you very much. The Pro team would like to start off by stating that it understands the concerns of the Con team about the risk and the problems that we're facing about COVID. However, the Pro team would also like to remind the Con team that in the process of going green and going further with reducing carbon emissions, we would be making use of things like electric cars or other better facilities that would create clean energy. These things need to be built, meaning that they create jobs. What people need right now with the COVID pandemic is jobs to get the economy moving, get money to the people. To do that, we need to create those jobs. By going green, we will be able to tackle that issue completely. Just by actually taking the time to focus on these issues, which is an enormous issue, as you have acknowledged, and is very pressing, as we have seen recently with the catastrophic environmental hazards that have been occurring around the globe. It is a pressing matter, just like COVID is. So not only would we, by going further with the reduction of fossil fuels and the likes, be creating jobs to bring the money back to the people, which unfortunately many of them have lost. We would be solving that economic issue. We would also be tackling the issue, which is enormous and needs to be addressed now as a whole at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Con team, you have the floor to present your first rebuttal speech.
Thank you. Thank you to the opposition for this position. However, let's speak about the facts. In 2014, the EU set out their General Green Deal for 2030, as we know, that aimed to strategize a plan to growth in a manner that is resource efficient. This was followed by individual member states that set out their individual green plans with varying terms and processes to better suit their resources, capabilities, and to what they can reasonably afford. It has been a while since 2014, and all countries without exceptions have set out their plans in motion. But let's be more concrete. The UK plans to ban diesel cars by 2030. However, there are two reasons why diesel cars can be considered a better option than, for example, electric cars. First of all, the battery for an electric car. This production requires a considerable amount of energy, and furthermore, it requires mining of the raw material. Then let's point out Slovakian Republic. The Green Plan expresses that their main focus by 2030 will be rebuilding their infrastructure, and the further reduction of CO2 is planned for the long run until 2050. Those countries set out their plans in motion already, and contracts have been closed, people hired, and money spent. So how do we expect countries to raise more money in this crisis to fix those arising issues? If we push countries to focus on the reduction of CO2, significant changes will have to be made, and they are highly dependent on economic investments which would be required. Some countries would be pushed way too far financially just to meet the deadline, and perhaps so far that some countries may face economic collapse of the country as a whole, and therefore would no longer be in a run for the position where they could afford any assistance to the plan for the climatic change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Pro team, you have the floor for your second rebuttal speech.
Okay, thank you. The Pro team would like to start off by stating that again, it recognizes the issues of growing economy again, and that, like mentioned just earlier, by going green, we will be creating jobs and bringing more money into the economy. The Khan team is worried about where this money comes from. The current plans primarily come from the EU budget itself. So the worries about it coming from the member states as a majority is nothing to worry about, as the EU does recognize that. And if the EU were to continue with expanding their plans for the reduction of greenhouse emissions, it would only make sense that they also proceed to continue with that way of financing. The Pro team would further like to state that the Khan team mentioned the UK and their plans about diesel cards, would like to state that the UK is no longer a part of the EU, so mentioning them would be quite irrelevant to this conversation, as we are talking about the EU themselves. Further, the Pro team would once again like to reiterate that while some countries might not have the economic position and might be leaning into other groups, it still is worth it for the EU to continue. The EU has influence, not just within the EU border, as you may guess, but also outside of it. So setting that example is extremely important. Further than that, the ways that plans are made right now, they're simply plans. They're not quite set legally binding, which is also another thing that needs to be done. Further extending these plans by making sure that countries are being held accountable to them is important to achieving our goals. With this, we would like to also state that that are many other options that are also available where it comes about energy. The Khan team has mentioned worries about needing to also expand the economy, and that obviously is going to cost certain fuel emissions, but there are alternative, green alternative and healthy alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Khan team now has the floor for their second rebuttal speech.
Just sorry, give me a second to fix my camera, I'm sorry. So, thank you for your argument. Although we do recognize the essential nature of the issue, we cannot ignore the most obvious drawback of our fellow delegates' position. If the EU were to take more drastic measures towards combating climate change at the time of such turmoil, it is our opinion that public backlash is imminent. For over a year now, have the citizens of the entire world, including the Union, have been suffering from the economic calamity of COVID-19. Millions of people lost their jobs, their significant others, even their homes. People had to change their entire way of living, and some of them have been living in constant stress and anxiety in this period of COVID restrictions. Most people nowadays aren't concerned with the issue of climate change, and not because of their ignorance, but because they're simply trying to survive. And to see that the government is spending their hard-earned money on future issues rather than resolving the current situation is baffling to them, and is guaranteed to cause riots and protests all over the world. The European Union is set on protecting the well-being of their citizens and maintaining peace. So it is our opinion that they should focus their attention on a matter which is more relevant and real in today's circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Team 3, you have the floor for your last rebuttal speech.
Hello, am I visible and audible?
I can only hear you. I cannot see you just yet.
Hello?
Yes, now I see you. Perfect.
Can I start? Okay. Throughout the course of this debate, the opposition has on multiple occasions pointed to the fact that there is currently an economic strain on the whole world. However, I think they have failed to acknowledge that currently the fossil fuel sector is only sustainable due to the subsidies it receives from the government. Technically, the EU would, of course, have to implement new sources into this sector as well, but simply taking out subsidies, the subsidies provided for the fossil fuel sector and implementing them into the new renewable sector would be more than enough for us to see progress right now. What they have failed to establish as well is that currently there is no plan established to phase out fossil fuel subsidies granted to member states. This can be seen by a report that was sent to the European Commission. However, that is not the only thing that we have to discuss. They have on multiple occasions brought the fact that COVID is a more imminent threat. However, things are not as simple as they sound. Because COVID right now is more dangerous and more imminent, that does not mean that it is more important than other issues such as global warming or climate change. The implications that we see from climate change are not somewhere in the future. They're coming to us now, and they're coming to us in the next decade or so. We have already seen the temperatures rising, we have already seen the global sea level rising, and we have suffered the consequences of those actions. Multiple people have lost their jobs due to the changes that are currently occurring, and that is a fact. I do agree that there is some ground to be given for the fact that COVID is currently more imminent, but that is not to disregard the whole opinion and the whole importance of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Team 5, you have the floor for your last rebuttal speech.
Thank you. Many people believe that the COVID-19 crisis wasn't as a major problem as it seems. I may only agree to disagree to this, and the reverberation of this disaster is yet to be felt. According to the European Commission, over 70% of the adult population in the EU is vaccinated. A majority of 70% may appear as a positive path to resolving COVID-19 crisis. However, the mere large-scale vaccination is being questioned. In April of this year, Professor Luc Montagnier, which is Nobel laureate and mainly the person that stands behind the discovery of HIV, emphasized the mass vaccination is a grave scientific and medical mistake. Fast forward to November, the research shows that those who are vaccinated becomes bearers of COVID-19 virus, as well as bearers of mutated type of this virus. But what does this mean on a greater scale? What may happen is that autoimmune process starts in our bodies, meaning that our own immunity fights against our own cells. This research is supported by English, French, Czech, as well as Slovakian scientists, as well as lawyers, and it has been recently submitted to the ICJ and it has been validated. If this turns out to be truth and the trial is successful, anyone who shows that they have any medical problems connected to their compromised immune system and the factual proof that they have been vaccinated, they would be liable to sue government for significant compensations. We need the government to be ready for this possibility or any other that may arise and not burden them with any plans regarding the global warming. They already have their plans, so please let them first execute what they have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Team 3, you have the floor for your concluding statement.
Am I visible and audible? Hello?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Our counter colleagues throughout the course of this debate have on numerous occasions mentioned COVID. However, I believe that me and my team have sufficiently addressed our concerns and have provided basis for how we can address it while still being more ambitious in our green policy. My colleagues and I have presented throughout the course of this debate how the EU has undertaken actions that are in contradiction with the very same goals set out in the European Green Deal. Those goals being the reduction of overall greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030 and the achievement of climate neutrality by 2050. More specifically, we gave as an example the EU's failure to mark nuclear energy as low-carbon energy under the EU taxonomy, despite the available scientific and technical data being in opposition of that decision. Moreover, the EU did so despite 10 of its members stating that the transition from fossil fuels would be impossible without the implementation of nuclear energy. Furthermore, my colleagues and I have presented how the EU has failed to uphold its obligation under Article 37 of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights to provide a high level of environmental protection to its citizens. Taking this into consideration and understanding the dire consequence greenhouse gas emissions have on the environment, my colleagues and I believe that the EU should take a firmer stance on its fight against greenhouse gas emissions and reaffirm its position as the global leader on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Team 5, you have the floor for your concluding statement.
Thank you for your speech. In conclusion, we would like to say that our position could be summed up by saying that the world in its current state is full of sorrow and tragedy, and we are not here to claim that one suffering is greater than another, but rather to call for the strong ones of the world to, quote, put out fires as they appear, and to recognize the seriousness of the consequences that might come about if the COVID situation is left neglected and as is. We believe that once we successfully get over such a cataclysm, the people will be ready to treat global issues with more care and passion, leading to the climate change being averted at its core. Therefore, we believe that our world isn't beyond saving, and it's simply time to remember and promote one of the core values of the European Union and the international community itself, unity, because it is apparent to us that it will allow to overcome any crisis that is to come. With all that said and done, and with immense respect towards our opposition, we would like to thank them for their participation and, of course, compliment their forward thinking and their attention to the facts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all your arguments to all the participants. Unfortunately, we have no judge currently present here. However, you will receive their feedback in a written form. Similarly, the results will be communicated to you by email. This way, I would like to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for participating, and have a nice evening.
I'm sorry. Could I have the floor for a second before we finish?
Of course.
I would just like to once again thank you for hosting this great event, and for the timekeepers and for our opponents who have done an immaculate job, and I'm very proud of them and of my team, well, in its entirety. And I would also like to thank the guests which were watching this debate, at least we hope they were. In particular, my classmates and my significant other who have been supporting us throughout the way. And this has been a great journey, and I wish everyone luck and great news.
Thank you. It is a pleasure for us to organize this as well. If nobody else has anything else to say, then thank you very much again, and have a nice evening.
Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good evening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.